The HOA violation letter arrived on a Tuesday morning, sealed in that unmistakable cream-colored envelope with the Oakbrook Community Association logo embossed in gold. I knew exactly who had sent it before I even opened it. Patricia Hendricks, the HOA president, had been making my life miserable for the past 3 years. This time, the violation was about my mailbox. Apparently, the weathered wooden post that had stood at the end of my driveway for 2 decades was aesthetically inconsistent with community standards. The previous violation had been about my garden gnomes. Before that, my daughter's basketball hoop. The violations were endless, petty, and deliberately designed to drain my sanity one letter at a time. I stood in my kitchen, coffee growing cold in my hands, and made a decision. That afternoon, I called my real estate agent, Marcus. "I'm done," I told him. "I want out of this HOA. Find me something nearby. Same school district, same neighborhood feel, but completely outside of their jurisdiction." Marcus called back 3 weeks later, his voice excited. "I found something you're going to love," he said. 50 acres, beautiful property, 10 miles outside the HOA boundary. It's been on the market for 2 years because it needs work, but the price reflects that. You could build your dream home, and Patricia Hendricks won't be able to touch you ever again. The property was perfect. Overgrown trees lined the perimeter, creating a natural barrier. The land gently sloped toward a creek in the back. There was an old gate at the entrance, wrought iron, massive, intimidating. When I stood at that gate and looked back toward the main road, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. I spent the next 8 months designing my new home. No mailbox committees. No paint color restrictions. No garden gnome police. I hired a contractor to clear the overgrown trees near the road, creating a clear sight line to the property. I installed a sturdy metal gate, the kind that actually locked, with an intercom system. It wasn't meant to be hostile. I simply wanted privacy. Patricia found out I was leaving through the HOA Facebook group. Someone's cousin knew someone who worked at the county assessor's office. By the time I signed the final papers, half the neighborhood knew I defected. The messages in the community chat ranged from sympathetic to downright hostile. Patricia herself posted a lengthy comment about people who abandon their community obligations and those who don't understand the value of standards. I ignored it, ignored them all. On moving day, I watched the moving trucks turn up my new private driveway. I stood inside the gate, my gate, on my property, beyond anyone's reach, and felt like I could finally breathe. The first time Patricia showed up unannounced was exactly 4 days after I moved in. I was organizing boxes in my new living room when I heard the sound of a car pulling up to the gate. I wasn't expecting anyone. I checked my security camera. Patricia's silver Mercedes, with her leaning out the window, staring at the lock gate like it had personally insulted her. I opened the intercom. "Can I help you?" "Open this gate," Patricia demanded, not bothering with pleasantries. "I need to speak with you about something important." "If it's about the HOA, you don't have jurisdiction here," I said calmly. "This property is outside your district." "It's not about the HOA," she said, but her tone suggested otherwise. "It's a neighborly concern. Now open the gate." I didn't open it. "What's the concern?" She paused, clearly frustrated that I wasn't complying with her expectations. "Your gate is too tall. It looks hostile. The neighborhood association has aesthetic standards that extend to our borders, and this is affecting our property values." There it was, the same controlling, boundary-pushing attitude that had driven me away in the first place. My property wasn't even in her association, but she couldn't accept that she had no power here. "The neighborhood association has no authority over my property," I said firmly. "This is private land outside the HOA district. You'll need to leave now." "This isn't over," Patricia said and drove away. But it was. In every practical sense, it was completely over. Over the next 3 weeks, Patricia tried every angle she could think of. She called the county about zoning violations that didn't exist. She filed a complaint about my aggressive gate installation with the county building department, which was dismissed immediately because I had all the proper permits. She even showed up with a surveyor one Saturday morning, try and convince him that my property line was actually 6 inches into Oakbrook's jurisdiction. It was all futile, and I think somewhere deep down, she knew it. What infuriated Patricia most wasn't that I had left the HOA. It was that I had created a barrier she couldn't penetrate. The gate became her obsession. I watched her on my security cameras, sitting in her car outside the property, just staring at it. She took photos. She called the county. She even tried to organize a community petition about my eyesore gate, but most of my former neighbors were sympathetic. Several had admitted privately that they considered leaving themselves. The final confrontation happened on a Friday morning in October. I was working in my garage when Patricia drove up to the gate and began honking, not politely, but aggressively, repeatedly, as if volume could somehow make me comply with her unspoken demands. I opened the gate just enough to step outside. Patricia got out of her car, her face flushed with anger. "You think you're so smart," she spat, walking right up to the gate. "You think this gate makes you above everyone else. Well, let me tell you something. You're still going to have to deal with this community. We're on the other side of this gate, and we're not going away." I looked at her for a long moment. This woman had spent years making my life difficult. She'd called my home a blight. She'd reported my children's toys as violations. She'd tried to control every aspect of my life on my own property. And now, standing outside my gate, she was still trying. "Patricia," I said quietly, "you're right. You're not going away. But neither am I. The difference is, now you have to stay on that side of this gate, and I get to live my life in peace. That's not me being above anyone. It's just how property rights work." She opened her mouth to respond, but there was nothing left to say. I closed the gate, engaged the lock, and watched on my security camera as she stood there for another 10 minutes, staring at the locked iron bars that separated her world from mine. Then she got back in her car and drove away. 6 months later, my new home was nearly complete. I'd built exactly what I wanted. A beautiful house with wide open spaces, a garden that stretched for acres, and no rules except the ones I made myself. My children played in the yard without fear of violation notices. I painted my front door purple just because I could. The HOA eventually tried to amend their bylaws to extend their jurisdiction slightly, but the county rejected it. There simply wasn't legal ground for it. Patricia remained the HOA president, but something had shifted in the community. Several families had quietly inquired about properties outside the district. The iron grip had loosened. As for my new neighbors, the actual neighbors outside the HOA, they were wonderful. Nobody cared about my mailbox or my gate or my garden gnomes. They cared about community in a different way. Borrowing tools, helping with projects, genuine friendship rather than control. One evening, I stood at my gate looking back toward the road. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I could see the Oakbrook neighborhood in the distance, the houses lined up in their orderly rows, ruled by their invisible walls and unwritten laws. I thought about Patricia and understood something important. She wasn't really angry about the gate or the mailbox or the property values. She was angry because she'd lost control. Control was the only language she knew, and now, finally, I had spoken a different one. I closed the gate, locked it, and walked back to my home. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was running from something. I was simply running toward the life I wanted. Behind me, the locked gate stood firm, not as a barrier against the world, but as a boundary that protected my peace. And no amount of honking or complaining or petty determination could ever break through it.